As requested in my last Holy Priest guide, this is a step-by-step guide. I'm going to actually walk you through a basic pull and some of the tools and things that you want to keep track of when you're learning Holy Priest, and then go through some of the harder and easier examples of things that we excel at as Holy Priest. Now, you'll hear me and other people say that this spec is easy to get into. It's a good beginner spec, but by no means does that make it easy. It's fast, and it does demand that you stay on your toes. So it's very important to have a good flow to sort of kickstart your healing process and really get the heals flowing so that you can get back to doing damage and restoring your mana and prepare for the next wave of incoming damage. So we have a couple examples to go over today. Don't want to take too long, but this isn't a basic guide where I'm going to go through every button and everything like that. No, this is more if you've played around with the kit and you have like just a semblance of what to do. This should get you the rest of the way there. Focus on Mythic Plus. My name is BowserTheHealer, and if you like healing content, hey, get subscribed to mean a lot to me, or if you just like listening to me talk about World of Warcraft, you know I appreciate you. Okay, before we get into a basic pull, I want to talk about some pre-pull stuff, some preliminary information, if you will. And starting off, I just sort of expect these talents. Don't look at my left side, look at my right side. I sort of expect these talents on most of you. I expect that we're going to be running Divine Image and Divine Word, as these two talents feel very core and very accessible if you're the pugging kind of player. Now, there are other builds, and if you want to hear all about them, I did talk about them in my last video. But because this is so accessible and I think so useful for new players, I'm going to kind of default to this one. But note that all of the other builds are pretty viable, so play around and have fun. The big trick to this game is to remember Divine Image. Using a Holy Word spell summons an image of Naru for 9 seconds. Anytime you use another Holy Word, you actually power up the current Naru that is out. However, note that these empowerments are their own individual timers, so it's not like you can do this really cool extension where you use all of your power words, make a really gigantic Naru that's just blasting, and then we can, say, use another Holy Word to extend that timer. No. Each individual stack falls off, but even having one Naru out is really, really powerful. And so most of the rotation and basics come to the idea of whenever you need to kickstart whatever you're doing, using a Holy Word is usually the best way to start whatever it is you're trying to do. Okay, first things first, operationally, Powered Fortitude. Make sure everyone has this in your party. 5% bonus stamina is a decent amount of health. And it's important to note that that is like a standing defense if it is so strong. Like, everyone is just a bit tankier because you're in the party. So if somebody gets like battle res, you're going to want to get it out quickly on them, but don't over prioritize it, say over healing or a damage check and say Brackenhide Hollow on the last boss, the totems. Yeah, you can wait a second to cast the Powered Fortitude. Just make sure you do it soon. Also, operationally, Renews. Renew is a good heal and you will use it, but it's mostly for small damage and to get us stacks of our tier. And our tier set really does require a proc from Renew. So the more you have out, the more procs you get. But this isn't the sort of thing that you need to be spamming. You'll run out of mana pretty quickly if you actually spam it too much. But feel free to use this between pulls, get 1 or 2 of them out. Use it to heal someone and kind of forget about them. They lost 10% of their HP. Throw a Renew on them, right? You're fine. And also, if you do end up using the Circle of Healing build, this is how you power up your Circle of Healing. So it's good to get a couple of these out between pulls so that you're ready to go with your next Circle of Healing. Now, the one move you do actually want to use on cooldown at almost all the time is Prayer of Mending. Now again, if you're doing a damage check in Brackenhide Hollow, or you're in the middle of healing through a really tough mechanic, I wouldn't send out a Prayer of Mending immediately. Focus on the other things. But Prayer of Mending on cooldown will save your buns. It doesn't sound like a very powerful spell when you look at the tooltip, but I highly recommend that you get used to it because background healing is busted. And anytime you have hands-off healing where something's helping you in the background while you're doing other things, it's strong. And Prayer of Mending is very strong. It's also insanely fun to use in boss fights where everyone's taking damage or during bursting, because you can just launch a Prayer of Mending and it'll start just jumping around and doing a ton of healing. And at 5,000 mana, it's very efficient. So we're going to try to keep this one on cooldown as often as possible. Hi, Bowser the Editor here. I didn't talk about Power Infusion. Let's just go over it really quick. 15 seconds of 20% haste for you and a friend. Always cast it on an ally. Don't cast it on yourself if you can avoid it, because you're going to get the effects of it anyway. If there's no one alive but you and a tank, just put it on the tank, whatever. It's best used, however, during someone's damage window, which is typically their big cooldowns, their 1, 2, and 3 minute cooldowns, and that's going to be at the start of a pull. However, if you do want to hold it as a healing cooldown, there's nothing wrong with that. Definitely, as you get into hierarchies, communicate to your team that you're holding PI for a mechanic, but Realistically, a lot of teams do expect it, so expect to try to line it up with somebody else when they're doing damage. Now, to start things off, let's say we're running up to a pull, and I should have footage on screen mimicking what I'm doing here. You want to get your renews out, your Prayer of Mending on cooldown, and as the enemies enter range and the tank starts pulling, you're going to want to use Shadow Word Pain. Now, it's important to note we're going to focus on damage first because A, contributing to damage is an important thing to do in Mythic Plus. B, Holy Priest damage is crazy good and very easy to upkeep. So it's not like it's a difficult task, and it's a very flexible task. So it's nice to have this stuff down. And 3, we're going to end up using our Power Word Chastise here. And that's going to not only help our damage out, but it's also going to help out our healing if we have to suddenly swap. And because you didn't use up a charge of Serenity, this really allows you to quickly move ahead of the curve as opposed to behind the curve. So I like to talk about the damage first, and it's pretty simple. Shadow Word Pain, and then walk up and Chastise when the pull stops. If it's taking a second to gather all of the mobs, feel free to like click through or tab through and Shadow Word Pain a bunch of targets. It's fun, it's a decent amount of damage, but you'll get more damage out of your other spells when everyone's grouped. You don't want more than one Shadow Word Pain out once you start standing and casting, but it can be a fun little optimization while you're waiting for the pull to start. Then, once the pull starts and everyone's standing still, you're going to want to stay somewhat close to melee so that you can run in and Psychic Scream if anything happens, but now it's time to cast. Hit your Chastise, and then you'll get 2 instant cast Holy Fires. Make sure Shadow Word Pain's up on someone, and then slam back your Holy Fires. This is a big splash damage, and it does a lot of damage to the primary target, so you're doing a lot in the prio target and AoE business. You get 2 for free, and then the third one you'll have to hard cast, and it'll go on its 10-second cooldown. Once you're done casting all of your Holy Fires, just hit Smite until Chastise comes back up. It's good whenever possible to get Chastise cooldown lowered, and you lower it with Smites and Holy Fires, because realistically, anytime you use Chastise, you kind of get yourself ahead of the curve in the healing game as well. And let's say you know the pull's about to get tough, cooling down Chastise early means that you could have it later and save it to use in a healing rotation, Chastise into a Serenity, and then start really cranking out the heals. So it's nice to get this on cooldown quickly after contributing with damage, because you've done your part in damage and you're ready to go. And that's it. Keep casting Smite, get Chastise off cooldown, and then feel free to press it again and hit your Holy Fires, keeping up a Shadow Word Pain. Very simple, very easy. And if you're in the middle of too much damage and it's hard to sneak in more than a single button, a Chastise into a Holy Fire is sometimes all that you need to do as a Holy Priest, and you're helping. You're doing your part. Thank you. So the fact that they're instant cast, I think, really plays into the versatility of Holy Priest. So do this until someone takes damage, sending out Prayer of Mendings whenever you can. Now, I know that sounds easy. So what if someone takes damage? Well, I always like to assess how much damage we're taking. If players are taking small amounts of chip damage, feel free to throw a renew on them or let the Prayer of Mendings jump around. You don't have to overthink this one. Even sometimes a Power Word Sanctify, or a Holy Word Sanctify, excuse me, is enough to get the job done. If they're taking larger than 20% of their health, it's probably time to start healing nice and proper. And if they take an extremely large amount of their life, it's probably time for Serenity. Don't feel bad about using Serenity charges. I only want you to hold charges of Holy Word Serenity if a big mechanic is coming up, in which case you should default to using Flash Heal and heal accordingly. Feel free to kickstart with a Serenity here or a Chastise, and then go into your healing rotation as needed. Use flash heals when you gotta go quick, and use heals when you got a spare moment. The heal is going to be a more efficient heal, but not in terms of time. So while it will save you on mana, and it is a very good heal, flash heal is the way to go more times than not. But if you straight up spam your flash heals, you're gonna run out of mana. So make sure that you're playing pretty effectively. If you need to full heal somebody and you can't afford to use a Serenity, try putting a renew on them first and then spamming heals and flash heals as needed. Also remember, because I often forget to talk about it, Power Word Life is a move that we take, and it can only be used when someone's below 35% health, but keep this move handy. Having Power Word Life to just quickly and easily get somebody back up to health without spending a Serenity charge is awesome, and it's a 15-second cooldown. At 6,000 mana, this move is very, very handy, so keep your Power Word Life around. Now, when I say that's it, I mean that is actually it. Use Serenities as needed, and Flash Heal and Heal as needed. and you'll get a sense of the flow early. And if you are making mistakes early, chances are you're not in a high enough key level where those mistakes are going to be so detrimental you never get your mana back or somebody dies. You're gonna maybe over flash heal and be like, oh, you know what, maybe I had time to heal there, or oh man, maybe I should have just used a Serenity there to make my life easier. And that's okay. You're gonna have to feel it out, and between those 3 moves and the Prayer of Mendings jumping around, you're golden. The Sanctify, on the other hand, is a bit special. If you run the Circle of Healing build, you're going to use this move a bit more liberally, but if you're running this standard cleave build that we're talking about, use Sanctify whenever you need to heal up multiple players. If you use it without powering it up with Pontifex, then it's going to feel a little weak, but it does get a bunch of renews out, so you can very quickly heal up players with that bonus healing. However, if you've just cast a couple of flash heals and heals, or recently have in the last 30 seconds, you might have a more powerful Sanctify. And it becomes a decent AoE heal if you use it when it's powered up. So if you have to use this move when it's not powered up, it feels bad, but it gets the job done eventually. Use it as needed, but it also has a bit of a range limitation. You need players to be grouped together. And before I go on a tangent about preservation players complaining that they're the only ones with range issues, trust me, you're gonna struggle to hit people with this. Try to get as many targets as possible, and try to throw yourself into the circle if you can as well, if you need healing. But remember, if there's like 3 targets in melee, you can always heal yourself afterwards. So try to get as many targets as possible when you have to use Sanctify, and hope that they're not spread out in Turbo Narnia and making your life much harder. But that's the basic stuff. Most pulls look like this, and some of the hardest pulls in the game look like this, but it's really fast. Like, everyone's taking damage and you're just going down the list healing people back to back. Remember that Power Word Life and Serenity are here to catch you back up. Power up your Sanctifies and you're gonna do fine. A lot of this you have to just feel. It's basic. I keep saying the word basic, but it's not necessarily easy, but you'll get that sense of flow pretty quickly, especially once you start remembering to get your Prayer of Mendings out. Honestly, it's night and day sometimes how much that move helps me, and I always like to remind people. But let's talk about some of the more unique situations you can find yourself in, and I want to talk a bit about those emergency buttons, especially Divine Word. So let's talk about Ruby Life Pools. Ruby Life Pools on the upstairs sections has these Infernals, and on Fortified Week, they hit like a truck. Now, they're not the hardest enemy in the world to deal with, honestly, but a lot of people are going to be taking damage. It's not fast enough damage that people are immediately at risk of dying, but if you don't get to healing them quickly through the damage over time that they get, you're going to find that your life's hard. Prayer of Mending does a lot of work, so if you can have a Prayer of Mending or 2 or 3 out before the Infernals let off their big blast, that's a good idea. Now, when it comes to Apotheosis as a cooldown, it essentially makes you do your normal rotation, but with more holy words. So the faster you can play, the more you get your holy words back, the more you can heal. So if you ever feel like you need your charges back immediately, or you're going to need to land some pretty fast, pretty heavy hitting heals, feel free to send like a PI and an Apotheosis, and you can heal through just about anything. But because that one sort of follows basic rotation, it doesn't actually change the way we heal other than doing the standard stuff faster, I want to talk about Divine Word. Divine Word has 3 basic uses, and I'll try to have them on screen for you right now. But Chastise is fun for damage, and it is fun for damage, but try not to use it on damage if you think you need to have a healing cooldown up. Sanctify is nice because it puts down an AoE, healing in the background for 15 seconds, and much like Evoker's Dream Breath, it's nice to have something in the background healing you up, but that's more for periodic small damage. It can help in these Infernal pulls, and if you don't have a Serenity available, Sanctify is a good option, but Serenity is the powerhouse here, because it's for 15 seconds, flash heal, and renew, heal for 30% more, and cost 20% less. This means that you're going to enter damn near mana positive territory spamming some of these moves like heal, and renew just became way better. Like, renew's an okay heal, but at 30% more and providing the 6% bonus healing while the Serenity healing bonus is active on flash heal and heal as well, you can do some really nice combinations. So when that Inferno goes off, if you don't feel like you're prepared enough, use a Divine Word to get through it, sending this out and trying to heal people up. And if anyone else is struggling in particular, feel free to get your Guardian Spirit on them. Guardian Spirit as a move is your cheat death, but it's only a 1-minute cooldown if it doesn't cheat death. A 60% heal amp though is always present on the move. So giving somebody a 60% heal amp means that you can help them out, and even your mastery will be doing way more healing, even if you don't stat for it, which really helps you out in the long run. So you can use this on yourself to keep yourself alive while you're healing up other people, and you're going to be healing yourself while you heal other people. You can use Guardian Spirit to make sure that the person with no defensives doesn't die, or you can make it so that the player with the least amount of self-healing can get the most amount out of what you give them, so that you can stop thinking about them. So Divine Word and things like Guardian Spirit really go well hand in hand. Hi, Bowser the Editor here. When we're talking about emergency cooldowns, I definitely forgot to talk about Shadow Fiend. Remember, Shadow Fiend with Essence Devourer is essentially just background healing, like another Prayer of Mending, but works a lot quicker. And I get sometimes roughly around 1 million healing with just a Shadow Fiend. On a 3-minute cooldown, it's not super reliable. So when I like to use this is whenever I feel like I've fallen behind on a setup and I don't think I'm going to have the tools to get through the next setup, I send out my Shadow Fiend to cover me. Use Shadow Fiend to cover yourself when the going gets rough, and honestly, it'll do everything else. All the other work is in its auto attacks. You just send it out right before that setup hits and do your thing, and Shadow Fiend will be helping in the background. It's awesome. We're not a Resto Shaman though. We don't have a cooldown for every scenario, which is why it's so important to prepare our heals and be ready for something coming in. So another tactic for dealing with these Infernals is that you can set up a renew on everyone before one of those Infernals goes off. So let's say we just finished healing through a large round of damage, or we're walking into the pull and we know that round of damage is coming. If Divine Word wasn't up, you can just renew everybody, get some Prayer of Mendings out in that downtime, and then when the going gets rough, you'll just be doing standard healing process to people. But that standard healing process will be 6% stronger, you have a Prayer of Mending jumping in the background, and you're going to be hopefully get some stacks of your tier set, which will allow you to use your holy words and continue that healing trend. Let's move on to another example though. I like the Frog Boss from Halls of Infusion, and we're actually only here to talk about one move, as the rest of the frog's damage is very manageable, and otherwise it's running away from frogs, crying and running and screaming. So realistically, the croak is the thing we should be talking about. That croak that happens is lethal on Tyrannical. And apologies, this is fortified footage. It's just the wrong week for me to record this, unfortunately, but this croak can be lethal. And this is somewhere where I have to disappoint all of you. Sometimes players need to hit the defensives to make it through a mechanic like this. They need to self-heal or set themselves up to play as defensive as possible, because there's a real chance that there might be like a hunter in the party who only has so many defensives and might struggle to survive this on a really high Tyrannical key, because you as a priest can kind of cover 2 people instantly. I recommend, say, sending your defenses as the croak starts, hitting a target with a Serenity, and then hitting yourself with a Serenity. Having Prayer of Mendings already up for this really does help as well. And if you want, you can renew a few people, including yourself and the target that you want to heal, and you should make it through this. If anyone gets dangerously low on the second croak, you're not going to have enough GCDs to actually heal them. You basically get 1 to 2 spells here, so it's very important that you keep 1 to 2 players up. If you absolutely must heal everyone just a little bit during this mechanic so that they don't die, my recommendation, spam some heals and flash heals to max out your Pontifex, get to that full stack, and then let a Sanctify rip and hope it saves everyone. It's going to be really hard though to get all these cooldowns back, so you're going to be kind of relying on your tier set as to not consuming a charge, which is fine, but it's going to mean you need to farm tier set charges. So you're going to be sending out more renews than normal. However, hopefully people aren't getting murdered by frogs, and you should be able to heal them up like normal. And then of course Toxic Effluvia is going to go off, but that's a little more traditional to heal through. You can just kind of spam heal people down the line and heal them up with no problems. But you don't want to be wasting your Sanctifies on this part of the fight if the croak is lethal. If the croak isn't lethal, you just need people to be at full health so that you can get them back up, which is a much less stressful endeavor. So honestly, if you're in an extremely high Tyrannical key, bring an Augmentation Evoker so that it's just a little bit easier for everyone to survive and really remove some of the pressure from yourself. Now, while we're here, let's talk about the third boss of Halls of Infusion. This boss is tough, and it is very tough, but A, bring a mana pot. The mana pot will really save your life. B, more Prayer of Mendings and using your cooldowns, and basically on cooldown, right? Quickly into that fight, you can use Apotheosis to help yourself catch back up and to not use as much mana. When you have a moment, channeling your Symbol of Hope to get mana back isn't a bad idea. And every single time Divine Word is up, hit Serenity or hit Sanctify if you don't have a charge of Serenity, and try to get some more healing done. Prayer of Mending, when you send it out, will just do as much healing as it possibly can, which is pretty efficient. But the real trick here is to remember 2 of our passive talents that are helping us out. Desperate Times increases the healing done on a target by 20% when they're below 50% HP, which is going to happen often in this boss fight and give you a lot more bang for your buck. We also have Everlasting Light. Heals restore up to 15% additional health based on your missing mana. Lean into this. As your mana bar starts running out, don't panic. You're going to get more value all of a sudden. This is useful. And then over here, Twist of Fate. After damaging or healing a target below 35% HP, gain 10% increased damage and healing for 8 seconds. When all of these are proccing, you're healing out of your mind. So try to play efficiently, but as that mana bar depletes, you're going to be able to get more value. And so you might even find that it's worth saving things like Apotheosis for the end of this fight when the going gets rough. Again, this is fortified footage. It's not too scary, but this boss on Tyrannical hits very, very hard. But you have the tools to deal with it as Holy Priest. And don't feel bad about spending flash heals here and burning through your mana. It's gonna happen. It's more important that people don't die. And as a bonus, if it's a really tough dungeon level, tell your teammates to use their defenses essentially on cooldown. That should allow them to just suddenly become tanky in the middle of the fight and hopefully require less healing. If everyone's using their self heals and their defensives, you should only have a couple of problematic targets that are hard to heal. But you're not going to be able to say renew ramp here. You're going to want to maybe put a renew on a target that really struggles to be healed in this section and not think more than that. And make sure you use Chastise. Remember, it's going to kind of kickstart your heals. And thus, while it's a damage move, you can send this out, maybe even find time for those holy fires. But no, just getting another divine image of Naru is enough to help you out here. Keep sending those buttons, layer them efficiently, and you'll find that you'll make it to the end. It's a lot. It's basically like a workout session. This is the endurance run, the long run, the cross country event of healing. You're gonna make it. Just stay confident and keep layering those heals. And finally, Brackenhide Hollow and Ruby Life Pools are my go-to learning dungeons. These dungeons, especially on Fortified, are really hard, especially because a lot of people take big chunky amounts of damage, and if the crowd control isn't good, it's going to be tough. But this is a perfect place for you to flex your ability to stop mobs from attacking with your own crowd control. Given that Psychic Stream is a 30-second cooldown with the Wei talent, you can stop a lot of spells with that, and a well-timed Chastise can also stop a spell. But with no kick, these dungeons are brutal, but they'll really show you the flow of the dungeon. And I just wanted to slip this in here before we go. Follower dungeons are awesome for learning how to heal. It's not a lot of incoming damage, but you're going to get an actual sense to the flow of pulls in a follower dungeon. And while it's not exactly what a player is going to do, it should get you started on the right path. So if you're truly just nervous and want to do a few reps of learning what it's like to even do your damage and your healing, I'm telling you, try out a follower dungeon. They're pretty good. But that's going to do it for me. I hope the step-by-step process helped. If you have any questions, let me know down below. And remember, there's a lot of viable builds. If you want to check out my last video, I cover a decent amount of them. There's a lot to enjoy in Holy Priest, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I have. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.